morning, Anne-Hélène. I've just had a call from one of my clients, Barnes and Slow. Their senior project manager, who's in France, a brilliant British engineer, Charles Robert, has just had some questions from the labour inspection about what he's doing in France, and they informed him that actually he cannot continue to work in France. He's only here for 2 months, and this is going to become a big business issue for them, as you can imagine. We're going to need to find a solution and assess what we could do together, I think.
Okay. To start with, shall we present ourselves and who we are?
Of course. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Your Experts in France, our podcast. Anne-Hélène, I believe that you are an HR expert. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Fiona. So I'm Anne-Hélène. I'm an HR expert. I've been working in international companies as an operational HR, and now I'm a freelance consultant working with different international companies willing to develop their business and doing their business in France. What about you, Fiona?
So, I'm a global mobility expert, and I'm actually an immigration expert as such, and I help companies dealing with matters around visas, work permits, residence permits for their employees and also for their families as such. And I have over 25 years of experience here in France.
Excellent. So where shall we start with this issue? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think that probably we need to see what are the various steps for human resources and what are the various steps for immigration. And they both do tie in together, and they're both essential for compliance as well. And that's what we'd like everybody to be able to understand.
Okay.
So what would be the first challenge in human resources when hiring a non-EU employee?
Well, to start with, Fiona, and I would say that's for any company, the recruitment and obviously the onboarding is the most important issue. We have to ensure we have the right job description, but that's for any type of company.
Yeah.
And if we are under a specific collective bargaining agreement, we have to ensure that the job description and the salary correspond to the level and to the coefficient of the collective bargaining agreement. That is the first step. And then we have to go through the onboarding from a compliance point of view. And I think this is very important. So what about you, Fiona? What is step 1 in immigration?
So we first of all need to verify if the employee is already in France, what permit category they have. Does that permit category allow the person to work, the employer to hire them? Or if they're going to have a change of status, let's say they were students, they need to go into an employee status. So if the employee is not in France, then we're going to need to see with the HR people everything around the position, the level of salary, and the coefficient, and then we have to find what is going to be the most suitable permit category according to that person's role and salary. And then I think there are a few other things.
Yes, at least you have to be careful that 2 working days before the hiring of the person, you have to inform the local prefecture for security checks.
Yes.
We can do it either by sending a mail or to connect on their online portal.
Yes, that's quite new, the online portal, and it's good.
Yeah, it's very easy, very straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when would you advise that to be done?
I would advise to do that at the same time as the DPAE.
What is the DPAE? Please explain.
So I'm going to try to explain in a very short way.
Okay.
The DPAE is a declaration which meets the requirements, of various control agencies, thereby avoiding any penalties, specifically and particularly regarding non-declared employment, and that is very, very important. Just to give you an example, one of my clients they didn't do the DPAE and they said, we stop the hiring. We can't do the
Oh my
hiring.
goodness.
So yeah, we have to be very careful with that.
And so that has to be done before hiring.
Yes, 8 days. 8 days before the hiring.
Ah.
And this is very important.
So there's quite a lot of planning there.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, on your side, Fiona, what should the company be aware of concerning the security checks?
So the security checks, as we call them, which is basically the prefecture seeing that the person doesn't have a false identity.
Yep.
We actually advise that that should be done 3 to 4 days in advance.
Right.
Because the rule is that if you don't hear back from the prefecture 2 days later, working days, then you are able to hire the person as such.
Right.
So it's quite easy. I've never ever had a prefecture come back with anything.
Right.
What about hiring a student who's completing an internship?
Okay, that's another story. Easy one, I would say, let's say.
Okay.
So usually students working in France, like international student working in France, have a student permit. From a professional experience, we all decide to offer them a permanent contract. Therefore, we need to ensure that they switch from a student permit to an employee's permit. We all know that is quite complicated at the end of the day. So, Fiona, what would you suggest for that?
So there are a couple of easy steps to follow as such. So first of all, the first thing is that you need to verify if the student has worked 964 hours during the last 12-month period. So then you know how many more hours they could work as a student for you. Please note that internships, professional training with the university don't count in the 964 hours as such. Point 2, you've got to verify the expiry date of the permit because that is a due date. Point 3, have they been issued with their diploma yet? And if they haven't, when is that going to be issued? Because you can't file until they actually have the diploma. And then point 4, verify with the HR manager the level of proposed salary to see if they could enter a talent category as such. So those are the main points that HR people need to think about before hiring, but it's not that complicated, but you do have to go through that process.
Yeah. So there are, Fiona, some points which are equally important. Yes, you are completely right. It's important to ensure that you've got a passport talent, and whatever is the situation, I never issue a permanent contract, CDI, without adding a clause in the contract clearly stating that a person who doesn't obtain the approval from the French authorities regarding the change of status, the employment contract is not valid. And this is very important. Otherwise, that can put the company in a very, very bad situation in terms of employment and hiring.
And then if they don't have a talent passport,
then we move to a different case. We have to do some candidate market search with the French Employment Agency for a minimum of 3 weeks prior to the filing to the change of the status application. And obviously, you need the help of the HR to do that, and that's for sure. So now, Fiona, what about the transfer of a non-EU employee in France?
So there are different intragroup transfer categories. There's an ICT detachment or talent passport where an employee is on assignment. Now the ICT detachment is for assignments that are going to be less than 3 years. The employee remains on the home country payroll, employment contract. Social security depends on whether there's a bilateral agreement, but this involves a lot of HR monitoring. Whereas the talent permit can be for an initial period of 4 years, but it can be extended. But here the employee is put onto a French employment contract, French payroll, French social security. So those are the main differences on those two categories, which of course have a lot of HR monitoring and implications as such. So perhaps you're going to be able to explain to us a little bit more about the HR monitoring side.
So yes, Fiona, that's right. We have to monitor on different levels, and especially for ICT detachment. Working hours, tax issues, and social security, and that is very important. Obviously, we have to include management reporting, posted worker notification, which is the
SIPSI.
Yeah,
SIPSI.
that's the one.
There we are.
SIPSI filing. It's very important to note that the ICT detachment permit, the employer cannot work on client site.
Yes, that is really, really important. So, to wrap it up, I'd say in France, everything is possible as long as you have the knowledge or you have support from experts to ensure that compliance is in place. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne-Hélène. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Take care. We'll see you on another one soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.